everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. This one is going to be referencing an article that came out recently that I think is so important as we go into 2026. So, Big Think did an article. So, if you can look it up, it came out, I believe, on December the 11th. 5 recommendations that will reshape learning and development in 2026. Why do I think this is important? Because so much of what they're talking about is what we've been talking about on this show forever. And it also ties back to a lot of the work that we do at the equity equation. So I want to share this with you because I think this is so important, regardless of where you are, the type of organization, the type of industry. This is the future of learning and development. So the first thing they talk about is strategy. And what they mean is what you're doing in your learning and development, your leadership development, all of your training, it needs to tie to the business, right? So it's not separate and apart. Part of the strategy is people can see the parallels, they can see the connections, where it makes sense. Oh, okay, this is what we're seeing in our leadership training. This is how it ties back to the business imperatives. So, number one is strategy. Number two, this is one that I could probably talk about forever. What is the architecture, right? How are we building all of this together? And your learning and development really needs to be tied to your leadership principles. What are your leadership principles? These are the things that guide your organization. It goes beyond values. Earlier this year, I believe it was this year, I worked with an organization where we created leadership principles. And it was based on interviews. It was based on like, what are the values? What does that look like every single day? How are these things manifested in the day to day or the work? Or how does it tie back to how decisions are being made, promotions, all of those things? And what we ended up doing was crafting leadership principles that were more aligned with where they felt they wanted to be, more so than the values, right? So I think it's a great exercise that any organization, especially a leadership team, can go through to ensure that everything is tied together. And so what the article talked about was embedding these leadership principles into the moments that matter, right? That's what I just said. Performance reviews, promotions, etc. So taking the time to connect those dots. The other part that came up under architecture, which was near and dear to me and the work that we do, was creating psychological safety, not just for the employees, but for leaders, right? How does your leadership team feel when it comes to speaking up, challenging the status quo, etc.? About a month ago, I worked with a leadership team. We did our psych safety and inclusion assessment, and they figured out, you know what? There's some challenges that we have here. Sometimes speaking up may not be, it's what we say, but it doesn't necessarily happen every single day. And so we were able to really hone in on some of those challenges and put it back on the leadership team as to what they needed to focus on or how they could show up differently, not only for their teams, but for each other. So it was a great way, and I'm glad that this particular article spoke specifically to psychological safety for leaders. The third thing that comes up in these recommendations is design, right? How are we co-creating this experience? How are we making sure that leaders have and get what they want out of this experience, in addition to ensuring that the organization is getting or training or upskilling leaders in a way that is beneficial to the organization? And so, how are we in a co creative relationship with that? More learning and development is going to be leaning toward this. And this is one that I think we actually do really well at the equity equation and helping organizations facilitate, or we facilitate some of that co-creation and what that looks like in coming together. The fourth thing is delivery, right? And so with that delivery, what are you actually dealing with? So this isn't just having random trainings based on, oh, we want to talk about, whatever it is. This is what are they stressing on every single day? What are some of the challenges? Great example of this is I was working with an organization not too long ago, and I've talked about this on the show, where they were having some communication challenges. But what really came up, what bubbled up was it was across generations. And so we started really working with them on, okay, how do we look at communicating across generations? What does psychological safety look like across generations? And really started to unpack what that looks like every single day. And so it was a great exercise. And one of the things that, thrills me the most is when I see these aha moments of, oh, yeah, that thing right there, or oh my gosh, I didn't even think of it from that perspective. And so being able to allow leaders to learn and grow in those types of ways really makes it meaningful, and you start to see some of that change in more sustainable ways. So making sure that that delivery is really focused on the things that they're dealing with every single day versus these random hot topics that may be being put out there by other organizations. And the last thing, number 5, which I think is the most important, is measurement. How are you measuring what is happening? How are you measuring on the performance of these leaders? Again, I will talk about our psych safety and inclusion assessment because it's a great tool to measure what is actually happening within the organization and with leaders. And so when I talk about that, I want to share with you all what we measure. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but high level what we measure with this assessment. So what you'll find is there equal opportunity for contribution? Do people on your team feel that it is an equitable distribution of opportunity? Do they get to tie into the work that they love in meaningful ways? Those types of things. The second thing we measure is inclusion and belonging at a high level. Do people feel that they are included? Are they a part of what's happening on the team? Do they feel that they belong as a part of the team, right? Or are there places or spaces where they feel that they're being excluded or left out, right? So what does that look like, again, on the team that they are a part of? The next piece is leadership's commitment to inclusion. Do they feel as if leaders are just talking it, or are they actually walking it as well, right? Is it just lip service, or are people seeing what leaders are saying in action every single day? So we want to make sure that there's alignment there, because if there's no alignment there, then that's part of the issue with that, especially within leadership. Open communication. So this is an area where we see quite a bit. I spoke about it just now. Do people feel that they can speak up, they can share, they can push back, they can challenge? Can they do that within their team? Can they do that with leaders? Right. So we look at all of that across the board. Then the overall psychological safety, right? Do people feel that they are valued, seen, heard, and connected? Can they push back? Can they challenge? Do they feel that there is some level of retaliation or retribution that comes if they speak up? All of that we look at as well. Another piece that I think is so important, that many organizations may overlook, or I've seen organizations kind of gloss over, is do people feel that they have the support that they need from their team itself, their direct team? And are there opportunities to collaborate? What does that look like? So are they being treated as a unit or individual contributors to that particular team? What does that look like? And is there an opportunity to collaborate with other teams within the organization? So we look at all of those things, because if there's psychological safety in one team, but it's not outside of that team, that is a larger issue. And so we also look at that and figure out how we can start to pull down some of those barriers to create that psychological safety. And last but not least, trust and respect. If you have listened to me, if you've heard anything that I've said over the last, I don't know, several years, trust and respect are the key um, pillars of psychological safety. And so, is there trust? Do people feel that they can trust the people on their team, their leaders? Do they trust the organization? Respect. Is it mutual? Is it two-way? Do they feel that they are valued and seen and connected and heard and all of those things within their team or with their leaders. If these two elements are not there, then it causes a challenge when it comes to psychological safety within the team, with that leader and across the organization. And so these are the aspects of the work that we do, the everyday interactions that really help us think about psychological safety and inclusion as an organization. And so when I saw this article the other day, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is fully in alignment with everything that we've been doing and the direction that I think this work needs to go. It needs to be connected. It really needs to focus on, again, the human aspects of this work and people feeling that they're actually getting something out of the process and they're not just a cog in the machine. So again, when we look at, all of these things in this article around architecture and strategy and design and, all of this, really think about what you all are doing when it comes to learning and development and the experiences that leaders are having to shape their leadership development for the next year. If you have any questions or if you would like to learn more about the psychological safety and inclusion assessment that we have, or any of the other programs that we have for leaders and their development, please feel free to reach out, give us a call. You can find us online at theequityequationllc.com, or you can send an email to info@theequityequationllc.com. So again, this was a little bit different of a DEI After 5, but I thought it was really interesting that this article came out right here at this time of year because people are preparing for 2026. And we want to make sure that you are positioning yourselves and your organization in a way that will be meaningful for your leaders in their development. So hopefully you walked away with a couple of nuggets. Hopefully we get to hear from a couple of you on this. And until next time, have a good one. DEI After 5 is produced by the Leon Thomas Group. For more information, go to theleonthomasgroup.com.